Hello and good afternoon, Xbox Nation. Welcome to this week's new episode of the Xbox Lunch Break Special. I'm your host, Mr. BoomStick XL, and of course, my co-host today, as always, on Mondays, is the best bald head in the business, Fuzzy Belvedere. How are you, kind sir? We have a rock-solid show. Two big topics to get into. Obviously, we've been waiting, and I even some people DM me like, shout out to LMNOP. It was like, hey, Boom, is there going to be a show? Yeah, I waited to like literally the 11th hour to set up the show because we were waiting for this big announcement that was a lot of people thought it was going to be a multiple tiered announcement. It turns out it was just one we all kind of expected, but one that we're going to talk about nonetheless. And on the back end of the new information that comes the way of Bethesda and their official Twitter account, we have another like subtopic question that we're going to be asking the community. But before, of course, we get there, Fuzzy, how are you feeling, sir? Welcome back.
Oh, I'm feeling great. Glad to be here with you. Been playing a lot of Assassin's Creed Shadows over the weekend. Watching people still be angry that people are playing and having fun, which is odd to me, but good game nonetheless. Haven't got back to playing as Yasuke just yet, but I think I'm pretty close. But you know, Naoe is a lot of fun, just slicing up fools and stabbing them and whatnot. So yeah, if you haven't played it yet, I recommend. Ubisoft Plus is your friend if you don't want to fork over the full 70 or whatever type of deal. But all in all, some good news, some good topics to talk about, some stuff that we've been kind of waiting on Xbox with this handheld and this Steam integration. So yeah, we got some stuff to get into.
Yeah, it's going to be a fun 70-ish minutes, folks. So, look, let's get right into the presser from Bethesda. This is, again, directly from their X account or Twitter, whatever you want to call it. So, in December, Fuzzy, we were privy to Indiana Jones for the Xbox Series X and S, and of course, it launched on PC. And during the Summer Games Fest, I believe it was, we got the dual announcement that not only would Xbox gamers be playing Indiana Jones and the Great Circle, which was and is a phenomenal game. One of the best things I think Machine Games has put out in a very long time, and it really does engross the player as being Indiana Jones. It's unbelievable. But of course, in that Summer Games Fest announcement, we did get the confirmation that it is also and was also coming to PlayStation 5. Now, this is a big deal, folks. It's a big deal because this is a AAA product. Make no mistake that this is high quality. The story is phenomenal. I would even dare say it might be one of the best Indiana Jones stories probably since the third film. It is so well written, so well acted. Troy Baker does, stellar work for this particular one. Like, he literally made you feel like this was Harrison Ford. It's probably the best work I've ever seen him do, to be quite frank. But the big news, Fuzzy, we finally have an actual release date for Indiana Jones and the Great Circle on PS5. Now, I understand, folks, that this is indeed an Xbox show through and through. You cut us, we bleed green. We all know that already. This is not a surprise. But even though this isn't a big announcement, not the one that I expected, to be quite frank, I honestly, in my heart, and probably because I'm a big nerd, was hoping and praying to the gaming gods, Fuzzy, that we would get an announcement for for Oblivion. And that didn't happen. And again, a piece of me kind of knew that this was going to happen because we're in spring. Spring was a couple of days ago. Here we are. The game is out 5 months from release on the Xbox Series X and S and on Steam. It's finally coming to the PlayStation 5. It's probably going to have some sort of PlayStation 5 Pro upgrades, which is awesome for anyone that has a PlayStation 5 Pro. That's the whole point of buying that console. So what do we have here? I have the presser, and again, even from PlayStation, put it out there. Indiana Jones first-person adventure, Indiana Jones and the Great Circle, comes to PlayStation 5 on April 17th. Now, of course, that's still a couple of weeks away, but we have the official release date. Now, I'm just curious to get your thoughts on here we are. We're in spring. They said spring during the Summer Games Fest, and here we are. The game is coming out in April. It's going to look and run, I would even dare say, identical to what you're getting on the Series X. I mean, it looked gorgeous. It ran fantastic. I don't know if the Pro is going to give anything extra on the back end, to be quite honest with you. They don't really say anything. I don't see any of the pressers here saying that, oh, it's going to run better. I would imagine that we'll wait for Digital Foundry to make that determination on what the best running version is. And I would imagine that if the PlayStation 5 Pro version is doing some things, maybe that will be updated in these the Xbox Series X version. I don't know for sure, because again, we have to wait for Digital Foundry to do their thing. But I just want to get your thoughts on the actual release date, April 17th, 2025. Look, and again, this is not being slanderous, folks. I've said this before. This should not come off as a surprise. Sony's been super light with games, with their first party. They've had some really good marketed deals. Let's make no mistake. Last year was a perfect example of that. And of course, like many times before it, they sold some, but they didn't sell enough. Games like Stellar Blade, an amazing looking game, sold 1 million copies. Has it sold more? No, I don't know, because they're not talking. Rise of the Ronin's another one, a perfect example of that. Yeah, it sold 1 million copies. Awesome. But we haven't heard anything else. Even Final Fantasy 7 remake or rebirth sold okay, but didn't sell like it was supposed to. I'm wondering what the sales are going to be in this game, because again, this is coming off of a year, back-to-back years, where Sony is super light with their first party. I'm interested to get your thoughts on the April 17th release date, but here is a sub-question, and this is really focused for the chat. So it's a 5-month block, right? From Xbox release to PlayStation 5 release. We know Xbox is going multi-plat. That's a fact, folks. That's not going away. My question to you is, again, this is the sub-question for the chat and for Fuzzy. How long do you feel that it's going to be? Is 5 months enough to make Xbox gamers feel at ease? Or does it have to be more? Let's get your thoughts, man. Oh, you're on mute, brother.
Sorry about that. It's a bit of a loaded question. If it were up to me, I would say a year or more, but that's just me. But knowing where Xbox is going, especially with this Play Anywhere and being able to play on multiple devices and whatnot, I would say this, somewhere in the 6-month range, maybe a month or two early or a month or two later, I think is sufficient. But my gut is telling me it's eventually going to get to a point where it might even be day and date, but we'll see if they get that far. Because I think the key thing on Microsoft's end would be if our first party studios are up to par to do the port simultaneously, then we could see it being sooner than like a 6-month period.
You mean like legitimately be building the game at the same time for both the Series X and the PlayStation 5? A lot of these studios aren't that big, Fuzzy.
Right. And that's, I think some of the bigger studios, obviously, like, well, the ones that are already going to stay multi-plat, like your Call of Duties, those they definitely have the the team size to be able to do so. But as far as something like, let's say, a Playground Games or a Machine Games or any of Bethesda's bigger studios, they will probably eventually get to that point. But I think right now that 6-month window, give or take a month or so, is a nice area. But like I said, if it was up to me, it'd be at least a year, or enough time to see how maybe the sales or activity wanes off. So if this one with Indiana Jones, if it shows that people aren't really playing it as much on Steam or aren't really playing it as much on Xbox, then sure, go ahead and get that other port out the door, get the PlayStation players playing, and then move on to like the next project if they haven't already started working on like the DLC for the Xbox player base and Steam player base and such. So I would want longer than 5 months, obviously, but I think that's going to be something that as time progresses, it's going to get maybe a shorter window. Like I would say a 3-month window is probably what they're targeting within the next 2 years. And then after that, it'll probably be even less time, but we'll see. But my personal take, hold it for at least a year. Sell some more Series S's, like do a Series S bundle at that point. But I know they're not as focused on hardware at this minute, but well, at least this generation of hardware. Next generation of hardware, different story, but we'll see if anything changes on the pacing after the next gen stuff or even the handheld is released.
I mean, that's the thing, right? Like, we know that the moneymaker for gaming as a whole has traditionally, and just through real life math, consoles are just a gateway. They're just a key to open the door to software, right? That's been historic for decades. And a lot of the companies took losses on the consoles to get people in at an affordable price than to sell them the games. And obviously, if you look at what's happening like right now in regards to what Microsoft is doing, their hardware has dropped 3 consecutive, maybe even more than 3. It could, for all I know, it could be 4 um, quarters where they've lost. And again, this is yes, uh, they're not selling Xbox consoles like they would like to. I mean, folks, there's just no denying it. But they are selling software. And obviously, Xbox Game Pass is for Xbox gamers. It is ultimately the exclusive. I know a lot of people still want to push back on the exclusivity thing. Folks, I'm right there with you. I'm not going to fight with you about it. I still feel weird on the fact that Forza Horizon 5 at some point this year is going to PlayStation 5. Now, that's great for PlayStation 5 gamers. That side is super excited for it. The numbers don't lie. It was 3, 4, and 13 in the most paid for games in the top 15 in America, and number 1 and number 2 across multiple regions across the world, right? So people are excited to play this game. It's unique. It's an arcade racer. It's had years and years and years of cars after cars, after tracks, after tracks, after DLC. So, and again, if you're a PlayStation only gamer that doesn't care about the console wars, you don't give a shit, right? You just want to go out and you want to play a game, you want to buy it, they go buy it, they play it, they enjoy it. I believe the same thing can be said about Indiana Jones. Now, I still kind of have reservations as to how it sells ultimately, right? Simply because Indiana Jones, for a lot of the graybeards that I see in the chat right here, and we'll get to me welcoming in everyone as I normally do, we appreciate Harrison Ford. We appreciate Indy. I mean, for me, even more personally, I've told you the story, a dozen times that I went to see Indiana Jones with my pops at City Cinema in the Bronx. It was like a real small 2-theater, rinky dink mom and pop organization kind of a thing. And we went on a boys' day out, right? And that's for me, that is always going to be something to me. That's why Indy is special to me. I'm still kind of hesitant to see if a game this good, and folks, make no mistake, Indiana Jones is absolutely fantastic. And if you have not played it, whether it be on PC, whether it be on your series console, or even on the PlayStation 5, please, for the love of Joe, play this game. Again, it is like playing a movie. It is everything that a PlayStation gamer loves about the way that their games are made. It has that movie-esque quality, the writing, the humor, the graphics. The only difference here is that it's first person as opposed to third person. Now, I'm not going to front. I honestly, in my heart of hearts, thought for sure that by the time this game released, Fuzzy, on the PlayStation 5, they would have invoked a third person mode for this game, and of course, then dropped that for Xbox players just because it was going on the PlayStation 5, catering to that audience. That didn't happen. I know that there's been some bugs. I've actually seen Indiana Jones in third person, which looked really freaking cool. I'm not going to lie to you. And look, I don't know. I haven't played it in third person. I really enjoyed playing it in first person. I'm just hoping that this process of putting games on PlayStation and removing themselves from exclusivity and the exclusivity conversation works out for Xbox in their favor. And I mean, we'll see. Ultimately, it's only time is going to tell. We see what's happening more specifically with Forza, and it's selling hotcakes. I'm actually a bit surprised on that because it is an arcade racer, and most PlayStation gamers have been accustomed or groomed for, at least for the last decade or so, of not really having an arcade racer that was first party. They had, some arcade racers like Dirt 5, for instance, one of my favorite. I absolutely love Dirt 5. People say I don't drive good. I came in first place, folks. I don't have those videos anymore. I somehow erased it, so I'm so mad. So I got to start playing again and still recording because people always break my balls on my driving. Listen, I don't drive like that in real life, folks. Okay, so there's that. But look, again, April 17th, 2025, Indiana Jones releasing in two flavors. Of course, there is the regular edition, and of course there is the deluxe edition. And there's obviously an even bigger one, which they have the collector's edition, which comes with, of course, the globe that I showed off a couple of maybe about 5 months ago that I got from Bethesda for going and playing Indiana Jones early, which was an amazing experience. Listen, folks, this is happening. I know there's going to be some people in the chat that are probably going to not listen to this part of the show. I get it. I understand that people want us to fight. I'm not about that life, folks. The exclusivity of Xbox is something that we never thought we would see, but it is happening. And I know there's been some talk about bending the knee, and people like myself, I've heard someone, again, we don't do the names thing here, accuse us, Xbox gamers, of the reason why this is happening, not fighting Xbox enough. Folks, you can't fight big business. We're customers. And yes, we have a big say-so. And you know what's interesting? I was talking with Kay Asante this morning, and I keep referring to us, the hardcore gamers, as a whopping 15%, right? It turns out, thanks to Matt Piscatella, do you know, and I didn't know this until speaking with Kay this morning, that only 4%, folks, of the populace actually buy one game per month. That's the hardcore. I've been saying 15% like I knew what I was talking about. Turns out that I was way giving too much credit to the hardcore fanboys like us. And fanboys doesn't necessarily mean Xbot or, I hate using the terminology, a PlayStation gamer. You know how I feel about that. But what it means is the hardcore gamer, the guy or gal that goes out and listens to podcasts, that read magazines still, that go on their socials and it's like, oh my God, Game X is coming out. I'm so excited. We're 4%. That is crazy if you think about it. So that's why this is happening. Any additional thoughts, Fuzzy?
No, other than for the PlayStation guys that are out there talking about, oh yeah, we got your games. Go ahead and buy this one because it's well worth it, especially considering you probably won't see anything Uncharted except for maybe a remake or a remaster for quite a few years. So I would say this is a worthwhile pickup. Just like I said with Forza Horizon 5, the goal would be, let's see if they can top the 4 million players that, PC and Xbox did within the first few weeks or whatever. So, have at it, pick up this game. It's well worth it. And, I guess wait until we decide to share the next, seconds with you kind of thing. Because I think there were quite a few people that were expecting another title to go to PS5 being announced today as well, but that didn't happen. So
yeah, and that
we'll
was
see.
Starfield. That was everyone thought this. You know what? Originally, and this would have been something. Think about it for a second. I mean, so obviously, this weekend I didn't do much of the much work on the channel. I actually unplugged, and you know why that is? One, because I love hanging out with Mrs. Boom, and that's all we did all weekend was went out shopping. It was great. Sorry to bore you with that stuff, but that's my life, right? I just hit level 11 in Assassin's Creed Shadow. I am just a pinch under 10 hours. And I swear to you folks, it almost happened. Last night I got up at like 1 something. It was like 1:43, I think it was. And I did the one eye in the clock that we always we're looking at the time. And I swear to you, I was like, man, this game is calling me in my sleep. I need to get and play some of this game. And I literally was almost late because I looked at the time and it was 11:56. I was like, holy shit, I got to get to the show. I was just freaking playing. I'm having fun with it. I know that a lot of people try to, do the thing that people do on social media and just somehow bomb this game, and it has some big Steam numbers. We'll talk about it towards the end of the week because the numbers continue to grow. It's beaten every Assassin's Creed before it. Such a great game. But look, listen. Again, great way to open up the show. Again, Indiana Jones, April 17th, 2025. It's coming in 3 different flavors: the regular edition, the medium edition that gives you all the DLC, or if you really like Indiana Jones, there is a collector's edition that you can get. In the collector's edition is ultra cool. I mean, again, just these things are happening. I understand for a lot of people, it still sours you, and I'm not going to argue or even say anything about that. You're entitled to feel soured about sticking with Xbox all these years, finally waiting for the #+1s, and you're getting them, and now they're being shared with other consoles. And I know that aggravates a lot of people, and I hear you, but ultimately, and I've said this before, and this is not be bending the knee or capping for the Microsoft Corporation because they don't pay me shit. You are winning with Game Pass. Now, is that enough for you? I don't know. That is enough for me. I pay my monthly, whatever it is, when it expires, whether it's $20 or it eventually goes up. I will gladly pay it because if you look at what's happening just in the next, I mean, all you have to do is go back to December and see how many games you've gotten. That's the exclusive, folks. And again, if that's not enough for you, I hear you. But Fuzzy, we got to get into the big topic of the show. This one over here has been raging since Friday. We talked about it a little bit on Breakfast at Boom on Friday, and over the weekend, we saw a lot of opinions. And to be quite fair and to be quite honest, and again, we don't name names here, folks, because we don't roll that way. There were a lot of content creators and very vocal PlayStation gamers very up in arms, Fuzzy, about the idea or the ideology that at some point Steam was going to be incorporated into Xbox in one way or another. Now, during GDC, we saw the accidentally on purpose thing happen where Steam, the tab for Steam, was on Xbox for PC. That ultimately, folks, that's cat out of the bag. That's happening. Now, what does that ultimately mean? What it means is that the rumors of the next Xbox that is now coming in 2027 and not 2026, along with their own handheld built from the ground up, probably by the Surface team, is going to have capabilities that involve Steam, maybe good old games, but certainly Epic Game Store, because Phil Spencer alluded to it when being interviewed, right? This is happening. Now, one of the things that has really enraged the PlayStation community is the idea that PlayStation games that are available on Steam could be purchased, which would be a good thing for Sony because that's more money coming in, and then ultimately played on Xbox hardware. that is Windows based. But that's not where it ends, folks, because we have even Jez Corden of Windows Central seems to think that if Sony really wanted to, they could block an Xbox or a Microsoft Windows user from a game that they purchased on Steam, and he is wrong. And I'm going to tell you why he's wrong, because Steam has policies in place that say that if you buy a game from them, there are no restrictions on where you can play this. Now, I think and I'm going to read verbatim exactly what Jez Corden said. And again, this isn't attacking Jez. Jez is a good friend of mine, but you know what? Instead of just, guessing, let me just read what Jez wrote. This is Jez Corden of Windows Central, one half of the Xbox 2 podcast, great friend of this show, great friend of the community. He says this: for those saying PlayStation can't block their games on Steam arbitrarily from an Xbox, quote Xbox PC, they absolutely 100% can. GeForce Now found this out the hard way. Now, Tom Warren, of course, everyone knows who Tom Warren is. He's been in the chat several times. He actually responds to Jez Corden, and this is where I absolutely agree with him. And again, this is not trying to attack Jez in any way. He said this, and I'm allowed to have an opinion as well. I think he's 100% wrong on this because of the way Steam is. But Tom Warren responds to Jez, and he says this: GFN, or our GeForce Now, was about how games was the situation with GeForce Now that he's referring to, according to Tom Warren, was about how games were distributed without consulting publishers. That wasn't anything to do with Valve, and I doubt that the Steam publishing agreement even allows you to block specific Windows devices. And this is where I have to say, and again, folks, I could be wrong. I don't think I am. And I do want to kind of just bring up Helldivers 2. Helldivers 2 was a game that was purchasable on Steam and not playable in 180 plus countries due to PSN not being available in those countries and Sony requiring PSN to be a part of you being able to play this game. Which, what does that ultimately meaning? Well, people in those 180 countries that wanted to play Helldivers 2 because it's a great freaking game, bought it and had to return it to Steam because they couldn't get past the PSN login. And what happened, Fuzzy? Well, Sony had to bend the knee because Sony likes money like all corporations, and they removed that from being having to have a PSN account. Now that makes perfect sense because in those 180 countries you could not have, and PSN was not available. Now, yes, it's utterly different, and it's not one-to-one, but it's close. Now, you have some thoughts and some theories that make a lot of sense, and I do want you to kind of talk about it because you actually opened my eyes to it, something I did not know. But if you buy a game and download that game, that Steam game is on your Steam library, and you download that game or that app to your device, whether it be the Xbox that's going to be underneath your TV or the handheld, and you have this in your console, you've downloaded it, there is absolutely no freaking way Sony is going to be able to allow to continue to sell games on Steam and then tell Steam where they want people to play them. That's not the way it works. Steam doesn't work for PlayStation. PlayStation works for Steam. If you're putting it onto their platform, they are selling your game, which is, standard 101. Sony gets 70%, they get 30%, everybody walks away happy. You can't ultimately tell Steam, oh, by the way, anyone with a Windows account trying to use this that is linked to Xbox is not allowed to play the game that you sold them that we put on the store. Good luck with that. That is not going to happen. Again, Fuzzy, please take it away. And now you have two sides of this coin over here. One of which is downloaded software versus streaming, but even the streaming, I think it's questionable.
Yeah, the streaming part is questionable, but they have a little more leeway. So if there's not already, not handwritten, but like a spelled out contract as far as for, let's say, Steam streaming, then Sony is probably going to have some wiggle room to be a problem. But the key thing, and this is where the difference is between GeForce Now versus Steam, it's you're taking something you've already bought and you're using their service to stream it. So it's almost like it's not that you're cutting Steam out of that deal. You've already purchased the deal. But now, since the GeForce Now is using stuff that you own, they have to work with the actual publisher on that streaming service. And streaming service being a new format for, accessing games, a lot of these contracts beforehand for downloaded games didn't, have the same, context as far as the streaming stuff. So it has to be like kind of renegotiated to some extent, or an actual written contract needs to be put in place. So for Steam, if this integration with Xbox means that you'll actually have the game apps downloaded to your device, which I believe they will, since this will be more so a PC handheld that has an Xbox layer to it, I believe that these are going to be physically on that device. And for Sony to tell Steam that you can't allow that, it's going to be a hard fought battle for PlayStation, because basically Xbox, when it's on that device, is a virtual machine. Basically, this is a Windows item that has a Xbox layer to it. You're going to ask Steam to say, nah, they can't play that or access that game. Good luck, Sony, having somebody go in there and differentiate between a regular Windows device and a Windows device with an Xbox, operation layer to it. That's going to be that gray area that they're going to have a real tough time, because what Gabe will probably do is like, all right, well, we'll just remove the stuff from the store. Gabe is selling 18,000 new games every year. If PlayStation games somehow aren't on his platform anymore, I don't think he's going to be all that hurt for business in that regard. But Sony, on the other hand, they would either have to, hurry up and buddy up more with Epic, or, fire on all cylinders and get that PC platform store that they want to have themselves up and running, which, hearing some stuff behind the scenes, they're still in the early building phase of that. And they're stuck on whatever, ideas that their engineers want to work on. But you didn't hear that from me. But all in all, it's going to be a lot harder for Sony to make that request of Steam to not allow something on a Windows device that just happens to have an Xbox skin to it, per se, without it affecting all Windows devices, which 90% of PCs, or 90% of Steam's customers are on a Windows PC. All the others are either running not Apache, what the heck is the other one, Linux, or another one that's like their Linux with the Proton layer, which would be their Steam big picture mode, where a handful of those in the community have basically turned their PCs into Steam boxes, essentially, but with an Xbox skin wrap to it, type of thing. But it's going to be tough if it is a streaming only thing, like a Steam Link type of setup. That's where Sony might have some leeway, but I don't think that's going to be the case, since this is more so like a Steam Deck, or more so like a ROG Ally, just with a different skin layer to it. Sony's gonna they would waste more time in lawyer fees and litigation and stuff like that than they would be making money on continuing to sell their games on the Steam platform. But like I said, Gabe won't be hurting for money if he says, you know what, this is too much of a headache, see ya. And Sony would be the one that would probably be, excuse my language, asked out for at least 2 to 4 years. So, but that's my 2 cents on it.
And it's a good 2 cents. I mean, look, you would think, and again, just reading the room over the weekend, PlayStation community, not the entire community, folks. Not 100% people were upset. Most people don't care. This is what we're talking about. That 4% that we're a part of, which I thought was 15%. Like I usually say 12, but 15 on a good day, and it turns out that it's 4%. Thanks to Matt Piscatella, who broke that down as to how many hardcore gamers and the percentage of that we buy at least one game per month. 4%. So that 4% was very loud over the weekend. And there were a lot of back and forth conversations regarding, Sony and what their plans are for, for their, not only the next generation hardware, but what they're going to do with first party and how they're going to expand selling their software. Now, look, you've heard me say this before, and I'm never going to back off this hill. I do think that Sony would make money if they put some of their games on Xbox. Now, I have a PlayStation 5, folks, so I'm not quote-unquote port begging. If they were to put a Days Gone on Xbox, folks, it'd sell 5 million copies. It really would. Would Xbox say, no, we don't want that game on our console? No, they would gladly say, hey, sell it on our platform. Same thing with Spider-Man. Spider-Man 2018 is literally sitting on a virtual shelf somewhere doing nothing, not even making any money. How many people are running out to buy Spider-Man 2018, Miles Morales, or even Spider-Man 2 for that matter? I mean, for crying out loud, Helldivers 2 outsold Spider-Man 2, which is just bonkers to me. But where Sony eventually will get to, Fuzzy, is day and date on PC. Now, this is something, I mean, you got to go like all the way back for Xbox to Quantum Break. Remember that whole thing with Phil Spencer and the Crap Gamer, where they were going at it with each other on the socials about why that was the, I guess, the canary in the coal mine, so to speak. I know Kay Asante always says that. And that was with Quantum Break. I don't remember when Quantum Break released, but it was probably a decade ago, at least.
Yeah, like 2015, 2016 range. Yeah.
There you go. So I was close. And Microsoft has been working on this, we want to put our games everywhere. Now, granted, I think why we're here with games going to PlayStation, some of which may even go day and date. We don't know. That hasn't happened yet. Until Doom, and then Doom will come out, and then there it is. But I'm talking about like Microsoft Game Studios first party, is Gears of War collection day and date, is day and date. We don't know. We don't know until that actually happens. But Microsoft, I think how they got here is the money people, the money men and women that were part of the $70 billion loan, so to speak, that they took. Ultimately we will see. Fuzzy, my question to you is, how soon do you think Sony's going to get to day and date on with their first party? Is Ghost of Yotai that first game? And if this handheld comes out, could we play Xbox gamers actually play that on this handheld with ROG Ally? Because that would be a story.
Yeah. Whew, that's a good one. Like I originally, and this was probably like 2 or 3 years ago, back when I heard Ben Studios was working on a new game that wasn't going to be Days Gone 2, I kind of figured their game would be the test case to be a day and date on both console and PC at the same time. Although I didn't know at that time it was going to be a games as a service, which would have definitely guaranteed that. But it would have made sense on a studio that is probably on its last leg as far as them keeping it open. It seems like Sony, or maybe it's, what's his name? I forget the main guy. It's on the tip of the tongue. It's the guy from for Forbidden West. Herman Holtz. Like with that guy, it seems like he's on a mission to either close that studio or just turn them into a support studio for Guerrilla. I figured that game would have been the test case, but since their gas game was canceled at this point, who knows when their next title, if there's a next title for them to work on. But Ghost of Yotai, considering how well Ghost of Tsushima did on PC, I think that's the one that if they could save some money on the advertising, not having to do it twice, have it launch at the same time, we could very well see it. I would not be surprised if that's a test case, considering like when you have games that don't have as much of a delay between the launch time and the maybe the re-release on a different platform, kind of like even with Indiana Jones, you're bound to make more on that initial launch day than splitting it up. Perfect example, if you look at even AC Shadows now, this is one of their first AC games that is day and date on Steam. Why is that important? Well, not as much of the PC base is doing the Ubisoft Plus or using their launcher and stuff, but having an AC game on Steam means the big majority of those that are PC gamers tend to play there. You're going to have a lot more eyes and a lot more access to PC gamers at that point. And I think given the numbers on how a lot of the PC ports that have been going to Steam haven't been doing as well as a lot of third-party titles that are there day and date for Steam and for console, and they do really well on PC. I mean, even with Helldivers 2, it did really, really well on PC, more so than it did on console. Now, whether it's a 60-40 split, 60 on PC, or maybe even a larger number, we won't exactly have all the finite details on it, but it did very well on PC, considering even after the refunds and returns that they've had to do because of the regional thing and some of the returns based on like the access because of the PSN link requirement that they eventually walked back. I think Sony is ready to try at least one of their games. Ghost of Yotai, seeing how well Shadows is doing, if they want to rival those types of numbers. And remember, it's a money man that's running all of Sony right now, and he was running PlayStation for a little bit before he like handpicked the one guy, I can't remember his name now, that's running PlayStation for him. I think they're more focused on hardware and selling more software, and the way to sell more software is to do a day and date release. And I think Ghost of Yotai is going to be that experiment. And if they wind up doing 10 million in the first day, whether it's a 50-50 split, I think they'll be happy, and that'll be the new program moving forward. But if they hold off on Yotai being that day and date, there's bound to be some game that they will wind up doing that's a single player from their first party. They've already done it with second party or their first party partners, and as well as they've already done it with some of their games as a service. I mean, Concord being one of them, but not really being the best example. But that was, I think, because of the game itself more so as opposed to the concept of doing a day and date. But Ghost of Yotai, I think that's a very good candidate, and they're going to want a game on launch day to do 10 million, which they haven't had this generation. They've had games that have sold over 10 million.
Right.
They haven't had ones like they had in the PS4 era where 10 million was like the first week or the first weekend. They haven't had a game do that this generation. They've had some that are close, which I think God of War was like at 5 million in the first weekend for Ragnarok. And then the same thing with Spider-Man 2. First weekend was like between 2 and 5 million. But when you're hearing things like Helldivers 2 did significantly better than Spider-Man 2, and the biggest difference was day and date PC versus 6-month delay, it's probably going to give their bean counters behind the scenes or their accountant team something to really think about and chew on for upcoming games.
Yeah, I mean, listen, make no mistake, folks. Helldivers 2 may not have been a game for everybody. I loved every second I played it. The game is difficult. That is absolutely without. My brother actually wound up returning it because he really hated the fact that you had to do the Konami code to drop like your stuff. Like it's once you get used to it, it never was a problem for me. But when you are surrounded and you're trying to get stuff done, and I ran a lot of solo missions, so of course that's just a death wish. But I still had fun with it. I know I had made mention over the weekend that someone had said something about Helldivers 2 potentially coming to Xbox, is what they heard. I heard that 6 months ago, and I know that people, clipped me, made fun of me, saying, you know what you're talking about. Folks, that is going to happen at some point. It's a multiplayer gas game. and it's making Sony a lot of money from their own players. It made the most money on Steam and Xbox players, which of course the Xbox community is a multiplayer community. Yes, we all love single player games, but for the most part, it's always been known as the dude bro shooter box. It would make them a lot of money. Ghost of Yotai is a very interesting one, and I absolutely agree with you. I've been banging that drum for weeks now, Fuzzy, where I do think that is day and date for PC, just based on the success of Helldivers. And yes, Ghost of Tsushima sold really well on PC, so they're gonna want to follow that. Why wouldn't they? Right? They don't have a lot of their own games coming out this year. They have a lot of games from Xbox going to their platform, and I'm sure their players are very happy with that. But for their own first party, outside of the few, and I mean, there's been a few. Obviously, MLB The Show 25 that came out. That's first party. There might be one. There might be one more in there. But the big one for them this year is going to be Ghost of Yotai. That is going to sell well, even with its controversy. Because and again, I don't pay attention to the stupid trolls of the world who are mad that it's a female protagonist versus following up Jin's story. Of course, I'd love to play and see what happens with Jin afterwards. That would be dope. But this is not that. This is something totally different. Will we eventually get back to Jin? I'd like to think so, but we will ultimately see. I think that is going to be a really big deal. I do think day and date, but I do want to shout out Zilla Nation in the chat. Zilla, great to see you here, brother. And thank you for always being a part of the chat. He says day and date, Fuzzy, will always be a case-by-case basis for Sony. The data shows it's not really needed to do day and date on PC right now, given the low sales numbers, and I don't know if the difference would be that much. What are your thoughts on that, man? Because it's a fantastic point, Zilla. Yeah. But I think that when you consider this is multi-layered, Fuzzy. Yeah. I think that why this is multi-layered is because of the amount of games that are not coming out on a succession base for PlayStation. They only have a few releasing this year. They have more games, and again, this is not being console worry, folks. The best thing happening for Sony this year is because Xbox has put a ton of freaking games on their console. And that's great for PlayStation players who only have a PlayStation. But I think that why this is multi-layered, Zilla and chat, is because they find themselves in a position where all of the gas games that they were going to depend on to make money for them fell through, right? Like the only thing that the one bright spot was Helldivers. And now we know that they're working on some other stuff. The only one left that's still, and we haven't heard anything, which kind of tells me this thing might be in trouble or even already gone, is Fair Games. Like we haven't heard anything, and that's again, it's a big investment to get people to spend money on their console through skins and through weapon packs and seasons. And if that doesn't fall through, I think that this, you can call it whatever you want. I think it's a rush to get day and date, and Ghost of Yotai is definitely one of them. Any additional thoughts on that, Fuzzy?
Well, the PC aspect of things is kind of a tough nugget to compare. Like the biggest fear that a lot of people have is that it would cannibalize sales. And for those that already have a PC and a PlayStation 5, could it just mean that they only buy it on one of those devices as opposed to two of the devices, considering that they don't have some of the same features as Xbox as far as like cross progression and cross saves and whatnot? I think you won't see as much of the double dip in comparison, unless you're really hunting for additional trophies, which they really need to get that PC store, their own PC store up and going to continue that type of deal. But I think the big thing is all of their examples from a first party standpoint so far, where it's a 6 month to a year to 2 year delay from when the time launch of the original game on console versus PC, you're looking at something that when you compare it to bigger titles, they're underperforming. Like it's none of their games are doing GTA 5. Well, almost no game is doing GTA 5 type of numbers anyway. But all of that considered, if you look at like what you would spend for something like Spider-Man, and they've already accounted from the leaks where, the game cost 300 and some odd million versus the other one being almost half that previously, but 300 and some odd million for a game that you wait, like I think it was 6 months or 7 months or something like that from when it releases on console to releasing on PC, and the numbers are stagnant, as opposed to when you had that big advertising push where, there's a lot of games releasing in between the time that released to now, or when it released on Steam, that, a PC player would have been probably more likely to buy it at that time. The PC player that doesn't have any interest in a console, doesn't care about, buying a PS5 or an Xbox Series console or anything like that. They're just going to game on PC. That customer would have been more likely to buy it at the initial launch when the conversations about the game are high. All of the advertising is pretty much everywhere you look. That's where you get the impulse buys, you get the FOMO aspect of people wanting to buy that game. If you wait 6 months later, yeah, you can ramp up advertising again, but that's one, an added expense, and two, you're then competing against yourself with other games you may have released, or you're competing against other bigger games that release, like your Kingdom Come Deliverances, and people still buying things like Black Myth Wukong. You're going to have a harder time convincing that PC crowd that, after the 6 month delay, oh, now we care about you. Yes, we have some upgraded features, widescreen monitor or dual monitor, support, and extra ray tracing and whatnot. That's great. But there's like 5 or 6 other games that are high up on the Steam charts at that point that you're competing with, and you're not really going to crack that top 10 at that point because people have kind of moved on from it. The hype from Spider-Man would have been when it launched on console. So just my personal thought, I think it would be better for them to try at least one of their bigger titles when the ire is hot kind of thing, and release it on both platforms and see how it performs in comparison to where they were doing the 2-year delay, which was cut down for a lot of them to a 1-year delay to 6 month delay. But if it's not Ghost of Yotai, then it'll probably be Soros. One of those two. I think Soros is a given, considering they do not do, or at least their previous one with Returnal didn't do as well between console and PC. And it seems like the support for that fell off. But I think a lot of that, the issue with that was looking at how their save setup was set, where people were losing progress because they couldn't turn the game off. At least that was on console. But like, I think it's going to be one of those cases where they're going to look at something like Soros or Ghost of Yotai. I think Ghost of Yotai is that bigger title. Sure, they're already selling, the hardware, PS5s, at a great pace. They're already ahead of their projections in comparison, I think, to even PS4 at this point, or roughly around the same level. But that being said, you're not going to cannibalize your overall sales, because the guy that has both devices is more than likely going to buy it on their preferred platform, or what they would consider the better treated platform, where it might be the extra support the PC gets, or they might stick with buying it on console for, the trophy aspect and stuff. But you're not going to get as much double dipping in that regard if you don't have your own unified PC store at that point. But we'll see. I would say, if it's not Ghost of Yotai, definitely Soros. But Ghost of Yotai, I think, makes more sense at this point, considering they want to get the most out of their advertising dollars, see if the PC crowd that they know is a bigger gaming space than console in general is enough of a base to try and cater to, or at least attract to, as far as with their titles at the same time, as opposed to, delaying it and making, PC gamers wait while other PC only games that they're, looking forward to are, kind of eating their lunch at that point.
I mean, listen, only time is going to tell. Ghost of Yotai does not have a release date. Most of us seem to think that it's going to be holiday of 2025. That makes perfect sense. But then again, it could come out in the summer. And the longer it takes to get out on PlayStation 5 and PlayStation 5 Pro, at least in my opinion, Fuzzy, the better chance it has to go to PC. We will certainly see if that's going to be a thing, and if Sony likes money and they don't anticipate putting any games onto Xbox the same way Xbox is putting games onto PlayStation, they need to figure it out some way or another. And if Fair Games is nowhere to be found, that's not going to make any money for them. And Helldivers 2, it's still doing well for them, but it's not like printing money, especially on PlayStation. It's making more money and has more players. I mean, just the stats are there, folks. So you got to do is go looking for them on Steam. And that was a huge success for them. So if they want that kind of success to have, both sides of the coin, they'll consider doing day and date quicker. I think that the market, and you know what, Fuzzy, maybe because, like you said earlier, there are now money people running Sony. And if this was Herman Holtz and Jim Ryan, you would probably never see that happen, or at least for many, many years. But because they're kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place because of investments that did not pan out for them, especially in the gas game thing. Remember, at one point they had 12. They got rid of 10. There's one out making money for them. That's the test case that did well. And of course, there's still one lingering, which I don't know is even going to come out at this point, because we have not had any updates to it, and we see how quickly they're willing to just cut the cord. We again, Fair Games, maybe we hear something this year, maybe we won't. Again, only time is going to tell. But listen, ladies and gentlemen, we are at the 60-minute mark, but I do have an additional story here, and I figured, you know what? We can go another 15 or 20 minutes, because why the H not? Fuzzy, I have a story here that originated from a report that came the way of Ecstasies. Now, Ecstasies, if you know, folks, is a Spanish YouTuber from Spain. And, well, like I said, does he get it wrong sometimes? Sure. But I could tell you this, he gets it right way more. Now, he reported originally that Hollow Knight, which of course is an incredible game that I honestly got to go back. I think I might have put like an hour into that game, which is a shame. Everyone that has played it has loved it. Well, in 2019, Silksong, its successor or its sequel, was announced, and gamers fans of this brand, Hollow Knight, have been waiting ever since. Well, he tweeted something, and this is what Ecstasies had to say. Today, Hollow Knight Silksong's Steam metadata was updated for the first time in a very long time. And this is what was added to that Steam page. Added support for GeForce Now. Legal terms were updated. Added some library resources. And then I saw a story from one of my favorite places to get news from, and that is VGC.com. You've heard me talk about them before. This article that I have in front of me was written by Jordan Midler. It says Hollow Knight Silksong Steam page gets a minor update, sparking faint hope from fans. The story goes on to say Hollow Knight Silksong fans are once again hoping for a minor update on the sequel, hoping that this minor update on the sequel may point to more information coming soon. Now, the story, of course, reiterates what I just said about it being announced in February of 2019 and is due to be released on the PC, PS4, PS5, Switch, Xbox One, Xbox Series X and S, and also, and this is the real kicker here, be available on Xbox Game Pass day and date, which is dope. Now, the most significant update about this game in recent years came in May of 2023 when Team Cherry confirmed that the game actually had been delayed. The story goes on to say, such is the lack of news about this game and the ever-growing fan base for the first in the series, that any tiny piece of information about Silksong is treated with great interest from most fans. Now, Fuzzy, again, this is not the biggest topic of the day, but one I kind of wanted to get into. And again, I don't really have a personal connection to the original game because I played it. I believe I played maybe about an hour of Hollow Knight, and I don't know why I didn't continue. Again, the game I've seen people play it. I've watched video of it. It's gorgeous. It's everything I could want from a 2D side scroller. And I don't know why I never went back to it. I will eventually have to play the original before getting into Silksong, which again is going to be in Game Pass day and date whenever it releases. But if you remember, I'm not sure if it was last week or the week before, Ecstasies actually had reported that he heard that we should get an actual release date between now and June.
Mhm.
Now, again, that hasn't happened as of yet. June is the big gaming show. I don't
Right.
know if Hollow Knight shows up at Jeff's show. I mean, it kind of seems like it would, but because they're in bed with Microsoft, this could be a game that they not only show at the showcase that's happening this June, but shadow drop it into Xbox Game Pass and every store the day of that event. That sounds something Microsoft would do. Let's
Mhm.
get your thoughts on the recent, again, small update, but it has gotten people very excited that we could get something soon.
Yeah, it's great as far as hope for this year and everything that this game would release. Like it's been enough time has passed since I think the last time we saw it, and with Ecstasies making mention, like you said, not too long ago about hearing something as far as a release date, imminent to some extent, makes sense. And to have that Steam database thing update, where I guess now that it'll be part of GeForce now, as well as any other additional things that they may have updated on that page, I would hope that it makes an appearance at like the Xbox showcase. Once again, it would be like, I guess, 2 years from the last time it showed up at the Xbox showcase. But I could foresee that being a day that it's shown, and maybe even, like you said, a shadow drop where play it today kind of thing. Although that would be one of the ones that might be harder to keep under wraps as far as because it would have to launch on Steam, it's going to launch on PlayStation, it's going to launch on Xbox and everything. And it's one of those where somebody, even if it's one of their foreign pages, is going to have something a day or two earlier than they probably should. But looking forward to it. Hopefully we hear something soon, or at least by the first weekend in June or first Sunday in June, because I think that's when the fan fest will happen. But yeah, it's been enough time. I wish this was also the case for Replaced. I think Replaced made mention earlier this year that it will be pushed to 2026. But and then there's always the Last Night that I'm still looking forward to. But that one,
Dude, that
I
game
think,
looks so good, and I don't know if we're ever going to get it. My God, man, that's another one. The Last Night, yes, absolutely.
yeah, it's just one guy working on it. He's created some sort of like pixel engine that would allow other games that are like older games to have more of this pixelated effect without it being a performance hog kind of thing. So he's working on the game as well as some other stuff, but hopefully we get that at some point. But Silksong coming this year. I think the game from the guys that do Little Nightmares, because they just had that, I think, shown at the Future Games. I mean, this would be a great year for indies if we get
Yes.
Silksong along with that as well. So fingers crossed. Hope for June release, but if it's going to be a sooner than June release, that might actually work out for the best, as long as it's out of the way of like South of Midnight and Claire Obscures, Expedition 33.
Another one in
We'll,
April.
we'll be good. Although, with it being, let's say, if it's the middle of April, it might suck for the PlayStation guys that were waiting for Indie, Silksong, and Forza Horizon, because it's only about a week between Indie and Forza Horizon. So fitting Silksong in between that might be a miss as far as their allocation for time. But yeah, hopefully by June.
Well, we will certainly see. But, ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it for us. But before we get out of here, I got to catch up on Super Chats. We got a gifted sub from our good brother who's here and very generous each and every day. That is Do You K Now, the broke boy insider. Will, it's great to see you here, brother. Thank you very much for the one gifted Double Barrel Gaming membership. Please, folks, if you did get that membership from Will, give him a good old thank you in the chat. I'd greatly appreciate it. I'm sure he would as well. Generous friend of the program who's been a channel member for a whopping 3 years, ladies and gentlemen. LMNOPO in the chat. Salute to you, kind sir. He says, the best thing about Game Pass is you don't feel left out when it comes to finding a new game. There's plenty to discover every month and down the road. I mean, listen, what could you say? I know that in a piece of me, just putting on the business cap for a second, chat, is we win every month that you subscribe to Game Pass, because whether it be a Silk Song type of game or an Expedition 33 or a first party game like Indiana Jones, you can't argue that you're not winning. That is ultimately the exclusive. Now, is that enough for some people? No, people want things to go back to the way they were, where exclusives were exclusives. You bought a box for this exclusive, and that's it. And I hear you, folks. I am right there with you. I understand it. Unfortunately, that's not the business. So how we have to look at it is from a consumer's point of view. I play on Xbox, not just because of Game Pass. I play on Xbox because I have an incredible, very stout friends list. I really love my achievements over my trophies. I do, like, one of the biggest things, and this has been like a raging conversation, is quick resume. Like, if you know, like the kids like to say, quick resume is the shit. And again, maybe that doesn't work with like everything. Like every now and again, it works with Call of Duty. You get the error message, you press A, and you get right back into the game. Now, other times, I get like a loading screen. I'm like, oh shit, I gotta reset it. So I stop quick resume and I start it, and boom, I'm back into the game. But for like Assassin's Creed Shadow, man, that thing works awesome. Like, I'm literally shut the console down. The minute I started to back up, boom, it just gets right into it. It's awesome. So it's not perfect, but it's something I couldn't live without, to be honest with you, when it comes to gaming. But I mean, again, Game Pass is the best value in gaming. It continues to get even more valuable each and every month. And what you have coming in April alone, let's just say for shits and giggles, you did get Silk Song. Let's say, for instance, it did come out this month. That means that for April you would get Expedition 33, you'd get South by Midnight, and on top of that, again, this is just potential, Silk Song. Those three games alone would be enough for probably a player for a year, right? Because those games, they're middle size. They're not small, but you definitely play 6 months with those games for sure. And that's just 1 month. So again, folks, super appreciate the generosity as always, LMNOPO. We have two $5 super chats here from JD Gamer. JD, great to see you back here. And brother, thank you so much for the very generosity. He goes on to say this: I have a different view. What happens in 2 years when Microsoft/Xbox reach their real goal of Xbox Anywhere by deploying Xbox OS layer to every PC via an update? I mean, ultimately, that's what's going to happen. That's why this magical box underneath the TV is going to look and act like your standard console, but ultimately it's going to be a PC, and that PC layer. And I really think that, we haven't really so much talked about it, but right now when a developer makes a game, they make it on PC, right? That's standard, right? They make it on PC and they port it to the PS5, the PS4, the Series X, the Series S, the Xbox One X, the Xbox One S. And though obviously those older consoles are going away, the Dodo as well. So it's just going to be the PS5, the PS5 Pro, and the Series X and S. But this new console, if it becomes this PC underneath your TV, they're going to literally be building one version of this thing, right? It's going to be the one version that's going to run across all Windows PCs, which this thing is rumored to be. It's going to look like an Xbox. It's going to act like an Xbox, but ultimately it's going to be a PC. And that little tidbit right there really does remove all the conversation of why would anyone want to put a game on Xbox, because there's no additional development. Like I said, folks, I really think this is the future. Xbox, they got all the arrows. They're doing a bunch of different things. Some things, when you look at it from a single lens, doesn't make sense. when you take a step back and you just look at it, the big picture, it makes all the sense. Sony, very traditional, right? They're very, very traditional in a way where they do their business. The PlayStation 6 is going to be a very powerful console, but it's basically going to be a PlayStation 5 with power. That's what it's going to be. It is not going to be doing what Xbox is doing. They're just not. They're not there. And maybe they get there. Maybe they see what Xbox does and they release a PlayStation 6 and do an update or something. I don't know. But I think the PS6 is going to be a very powerful, very capable PS5. But we will see. His second $5 super chat says, what happens when PlayStation hardcores or hard codes a game to not run on PC with an Xbox OS layer, only to remember that Microsoft is Windows and all PCs now have Xbox OS, LOL. I mean, look, I'll put it this way. I was just looking on Twitter when you were talking, and bro, this whole thing with Jez Corden got like super serious. Not in a way where it was insulting, but I mean, John from Xbox Era got involved. Colt Eastwood got involved. I mean, it's a long running thread, and it really is kind of split. John is on. I think on our side. I'm not on anyone's side, but on with our thought process where if they were to block it, it would be not only a lot of trouble, but I think Steam would ultimately be like, well, all right, you want to block it, not a problem. Don't sell your game here. And they can go sell it somewhere else. And Sony's not going to do that. Sony's not stupid. Sony likes money. They're a corporation. Look how quickly, and I know that it's not 1-to-1, but it's close. Look what happened with the PSN login for those 180 countries where people who bought Helldivers 2 couldn't play it and had to return to Steam. What did Steam start doing? They stopped selling the game in those countries. Now, again, it's not 1-to-1, but it's similar. And ultimately, it's not PlayStation telling Steam what to do. Steam is saying, these are our rules. You want to sell here, and someone wants to play the game after they bought it, there are no restrictions. I don't believe that there is. I just don't. And I could be wrong, but I don't think I am. But that's going to do it for us here. That's all the super chats. Big thank you to, almost 600 people here on a Monday morning. We super appreciate, or Monday afternoon now. Fuzzy, thank you so much for joining me as always. Chat, you were awesome. A big thank you to all of the continued support through gifted memberships, through channel memberships, and of course the super chats that continue to come in and power the show behind the scenes. With everything that we have to do, and again, that really does focus on the giveaways, which of course we will have an announcement second half of the year of what our plans are for the fall, and we're expecting to be able to give away just as much as we did the years before. This year might be a little different because things are just tight for everybody, including us, and we got to make sure that we continue to put money into the house fund, run the channel, and of course still do our giveaways. But Fuzzy Belvedere, let's sell the brand. But we're not just going to sell your brand, kind sir. We're going to sell both you and the missus. Now, your channel, which, of course, the goal is to get to 1,000 subscribers in 2025, is the best place for anything and everything in the racing genre. But the missus has a horror podcast called Fright Night with Ferocious Fees, Friday evening, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, where, of course, you just had one with yourself, her, and Silent Cypher, and I know you were. I think you were talking about Monkey, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
And well, I haven't seen it yet, but Mrs. Boom and I are gonna have to check that out just based on what you guys and gals had to say. Sell the brand for both of you. Where can they subscribe to both of your YouTube channels? But more importantly, follow you on social media.
Well, as always, thank you for having me on. This was awesome doing the somewhat breaking news on like Bethesda's announcement today, as well as the whole thing with Xbox moving forward with Steam integration and this handheld that I can't wait to get my hands on. Great to see a lot of people in the chat having a conversation, being respectful. Only had to do one mute on some back and forth, but if we agree to disagree on some things, just enjoy gaming for what it is and have a good time playing all these games, and try to find as much time without necessarily cloning yourself on getting that good gaming time in and whatnot. But greatly appreciate everybody showing up today. Hit that like button if you haven't already. please subscribe. Greatly appreciate the support. And if you want to hear my rambles and rants on anything gaming related, just follow me on social media, including YouTube. Do a search for Fuzzy Belvedere and you'll be able to find me. I put the link in the chat for my wife's channel as well. Fright Night with Ferocious Fee. The Monkey was the movie for last week. This week it's going to be The Autopsy of Jane Doe. If you haven't already seen it, check it out. I think it's on either Netflix or Prime. If you have, a variety of streaming services like many of us do, you'll be able to find it. But it'll be the movie for this Friday. And have a great week gaming. There's plenty of games out there. Assassin's Creed is a good one. Definitely check it out if you haven't already. And just remember, Ubisoft Plus can be your friend. They already talked about don't own games or get used to not owning games. Well, you can do Ubisoft Plus, play it for a month. If you haven't beat it by the time you're at the end of the month, it'll probably be on sale. So you'll probably be able to pick it up for less than what it would have been for the day one purchase kind of thing. But enough about all of that. Enjoy gaming. Have a good week, guys, and hope to see you guys Friday morning for Breakfast with Boom at 10 a.m. right here, same channel, same time. Well, 10 a.m. instead of the same time, but
yes.
You know what I mean.
No, we got you, brother. Shout out to Max City Entertainment. He said, did Adamfall drop today in Game Pass? No. I believe it launched early through early access. But I think it's at the end of the week, Adamfall, for Game Pass. So if you bought it, I think you could play it early. And I think it's available on PC, but the actual game itself will launch into Game Pass later this week. I'm not sure if it's Thursday or Friday, but it should be by week's end. That is for certain. That game looks dope, but the minute I heard survival, and I'm like, oh man, I don't know. Yeah, if this is kind of like Stalker 2, I'm gonna play it, and I'm gonna be like, okay, this is good, but I'm going right back to Assassin's Creed because Assassin's Creed is fast and vicious and brutal, and I'll try it. It's Game Pass. All I have to do is download it. If I don't like it, erase it. It's fine. Delete it. But look, thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen, for checking out the show. Fuzzy and I super appreciate you guys and gals coming and hanging out with us for almost a 90-minute show. We're at the 80-minute mark. Thank you again. Of course, we will be back throughout this week with our normally scheduled programs. There will be some videos that will be made out of these conversations. I think I'm gonna make a video out of the Steam blocking thing because there's really a lot of good points here that I kind of want to just focus on. And I'm putting up one video went up earlier. I just finished putting the other one together now. That'll be going up later this afternoon. And of course, again, we're going to close out the show with something that's incredibly important to me, folks. Hopefully one day it'll be important to you. And that's something that my dad taught us when we were kids. And he would say, Craig, treat others how you want to be treated. And also, it doesn't cost anything to be nice. You live by those rules, son. I can guarantee you're going to have an awesome day. So take care, everyone. And we'll see you next week on the newest episode of the Xbox Lunch Break Special.